Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, I brought my piece of paper with me because without it I couldn't go anywhere. We're gathered here tonight to honour a man who has given almost 40 years of service to forestry. I don't know why I'm here, but unfortunately I was given the job of the month. And when I said to my fellow organisers, why is it? Well, they said to me, you know the longest. I suppose I'm not quite sure that I do know him the longest. There's a man sitting in front of me here who knows him quite a bit longer than me. As far as I can remember, Pat Hamilton was the first assistant he had in the crew. He says, I know him better, I know him. But I know Michael Darcy since 1965. And I can remember when I first met him. I came to Bandon as a young raw recruit in 1965, and of course I was walking. I didn't even have a bike, not mind a car. But if anybody knows Bandon Forest, you don't go far. You don't go far walking. So I was told to get a car, and it was suggested to me that the best man to get a car for, you know, was contact with Darcy. I contacted him. A roundabout way, but I contacted him anyway. I was brought up to meet Darcy on a particular Sunday evening in January 1965, and I told him my story, and he said, I'll fix you up. About the week hadn't passed when he rang. I didn't have a phone, but he rang Charlie Callahan to get a message to me that there was a car going up in Millstreet. He came down to Bandon, he collected me and brought me back to Jacksie Lewis. He got me good to Jacksie, and he fixed me up with a mini miner. But I think it's indicative of the man that I think all his life he was out to help people. He got the car for me, he came down to Bandon, he picked me up, brought me back to Millstreet, bought the car for me, and brought me back home again. But that's the kind of guy Mick Darcy is. I later came to know him a lot better, of course. About some 4 or 5 years later, I got transferred to Macroom. And I think it's nearly 20 years I spent together with Mick, wasn't it? And I must say, in those 20 years, we never went across it. He was one. He's one of the most outstanding men I ever worked with, and it was a pleasure and an honour for me to work with Mick Darcy. Now, at the outset, I said that he spent the best part of 40 years in forestry. I may be corrected in my dates, but I think it was the 10th of October 1949 that he entered Avondale. And there was another man who was with us here tonight who entered Avondale at the same time, and I'd like to call upon him to say a few words. Daniel Driscoll. Dan you don't mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am honoured this evening to be asked to say a few words as a tribute to Mick Darcy for his retirement. Mick and I go back a very, very long way. As Michael said, we were in Avondale together. On the 10th of October, he said, I think Mick didn't arrive till the 11th. He was a day late in arriving in Avondale. That didn't set the trend, I'm sure, for the future in Paris. There was a very good reason, which he told me many years later, why he was late. But unfortunately, since Sally is with him tonight, I can't tell you. Suffice it to say that Mick was always a ladies' man. When the rest of us came into Avondale that evening and saw Mick, we said, this will never stick it out. And now, almost 40 years later, we're proved right. I think it was in 1958 he was sent to Macomb. And we have been very close together in the years since then. I think Michael McElroy said it when he said that no one could do more to help his fellow man. To me, Mick has been one of the best friends I've had in forestry. Many's the call I made on Mick when I was in trouble, and I never called in vain. I never met a forester who did, incidentally. I don't intend to go into a long rigmarole talking about Mick's virtues, but suffice it to say that I have never met a man in whom I would trust my life more willingly than in Mick. I wish to publicly thank him for his help and his friendship over the years. And I wish him health and wealth and happiness in this new phase of his career that he's now opening up for. Thank you, Mick.
Thank you, Dan. Well, now, as Dan said, he entered Avondale in 1949. In 52, as far as I know, he went to Donegal. He worked for a while at Ballyboffey as an assistant forester. He went from there on to Bonray to the late great Matt Dalton, whom I'm sure a lot of people in this hall can remember and remember well. But Mick spent a couple of years with Matt Dalton, and I'd say he earned it hard. He was with a tough taskmaster. But from what I'm told, Mick didn't spend all his time with Matt Dalton. He was inclined to back horses, I'm told. And I know that on a Saturday, when we worked on half days on a Saturday day, but half day Saturday morning, Mick was inclined to go to the Gannon Inn, and he was the guy with the car, and he collected the bits, and he went to the booking office. Sometimes they came up, more times they didn't. I don't know, do you owe any money to the fellas up there a lot of time? Anyway, Mick left Bonray, and in 1954 he went on to Strokestown in County Roscommon, where he took over a new forest there. And there he met his beautiful wife. Poor Mick. They went that long in Strokestown until he was sent off to Donegal, and he explored the Inishowen Peninsula. As a matter of fact, he took over a new forest in Buncrane and County Donegal he told me himself, and I'm sure it's true, that on his way to Donegal, he was told to call into the divisional office in Sligo. He was given a bundle of maps by the divisional in Sligo, and he said, "There's your forest." But Mick, being the man that he is, Mick went with his bundle of maps and he took it over, and Buncrana Forest is there as a hallmark to Mick Darcy. In 1958, he left Buncrana and he headed south to Macroom. And being the pioneer that he wasn't long in Macroom until the nursery was opened. In 1961, as far as I know, the first transplants were lined out in Macroom Nursery, just 2 years after Mick arriving there. So that's the kind of guy that Mick is. He gets stuck into a thing and he sees it through. Excuse me. I got to know Mick later on. I came to Macroom in 1968, and at that time he had a man working inside in a hut in the nursery, and I was there for a couple of weeks and I wondered, what is this fella doing? I discovered that he was inside repairing chainsaws. And so grew Macroom Workshop as we know it today. From a small timber hut back in the back of the nursery, that was grew the workshop as we know it today. So Mick was a pioneer in forestry, and he has left, there's a hallmark to Mick Darcy no matter where he went. Whatever he did, he has left his mark behind him. And as I said earlier on, Mick was a man who was concerned about people. And he was most concerned about his staff, wherever he went. And I think that all you have to do is look at the staff that are in Macroom Forest now. They're mostly second generation. The people who Mick took on 30 years ago, their sons are there today. And that's the kind of guy he was. He made sure that everybody was fixed up, and that he was so concerned about his staff. So now I think I'm talking too much about the man, but I'll call on one of that staff. I'll call on Jackie Spillane to say a couple of words, please.
I want to say only a few words on behalf of the forestry workers present and past in Macroom. Macroom, Musgrave and Ballyvourna. We wish Michael and Mr. Darcy the very best in years to come.
It's an absolute privilege for me to be here tonight. I'm not a great man with words, as many of you will know. I certainly can't follow the loquaciousness of so many speakers before me in praising Michael. It's difficult to add, in fact, to the superlatives which have been justifiably heaped on Mick tonight. I don't share the same length of experience or friendship with Mick that other speakers before me have done. I can truly and honestly say that that's my loss and nobody else's. I can confirm the tremendous care, understanding and friendship which Mick has and has retained for all and everybody that come in contact with him. There are so many areas in which he's been helpful to and friendly to me. I came into nurseries as an impertinent, arrogant researcher in 1978. And I didn't realise then the enormous amount of knowledge which was available with people like Michael and the immense ignorance which I had. And it is through people like Michael and others that I know the little I do know today about developing and managing crops in nurseries. He's been extraordinarily helpful, as many people know, in virtually every area of life that one cares to think about. And just one which hasn't been mentioned and which I can include because I've had personal contact with him. He has been a nurseryman extraordinaire, he's been a forester, workshops, and he also runs a very efficient transport system, which is extraordinarily important. All of us know here today, at this time of the year, when plants have been moved around. We've had many great difficulties, and now is not the place or time to go into this, but suffice to say that whenever our backs were to the wall, all we had to do was, Jesus, ring up Darcy with crew, and you'd get transport. I've thanked him before on this point, I do so again now. It's a great privilege, Michael, for me to have the possibility to say to you and to Sally, to wish you all the very best in your, what you euphemistically call your return. What I do wish you is long life, health, happiness, and that you never lose that great spirit of friendship and understanding that you have towards your fellow man. Thank you.
Towards. Now, during Mick's career in forestry, he was a great trade unionist, and he served with distinction for a long number of years on the executive of the State Foresters Association, and he fought many battles in Dublin with the late Henry Gray and many others during his time. He was succeeded on the executive by Michael Doyle from Benetier, and if Michael would come as far as the microphone, I'd like if he'd say a few words, please.
I would pick this night in order to get a small touch of laryngitis, but I hope you'll bear with me. I don't have anything really prepared much, but I think when you're talking about Michael Darcy, it is not necessary to have gone to an awful trouble preparing any script. Like Michael, I travelled fairly widely myself, and when I, in the late 60s, arrived in Donegal, the first question I was asked was, do you know Mick Darcy? So I said, I didn't know Mick very well, but at the time I was very familiar with his brother Jim, who's here with us tonight. But the one word, I think, it has already been mentioned a few times here tonight, and I think it is the most important word that sums up Michael Darcy, and that is the word obliging. I think that he was one of the most obliging and helpful men that you could meet in all your travels in any part of Ireland. He would at all times leave himself short in order to help his fellow foresters, and I'm sure his fellow people, neighbours, etc. He would, if you needed transport, as someone has already mentioned, or even if it was a tractor to send over across the Mushroom Mountain over to Benetier, if you asked Mick, he would drop his own work in order to help you out. I think that is the word, I think, that sums up Michael Darcy, and that is the word obliging. And I feel somewhere along the line as well, probably further back, I'd like to have known his father or his mother or someone along there, because it also typifies any of the Darcys that I have met as well. They have, when I was in Stranraer, I had Jim as my neighbour in Killigordon, and the very same, I could say exactly the same for him. If I needed help, they were always ready, and they would put themselves short in order to help you out. And I think that is a fantastic characteristic in any family. As Michael said, that in the 60s, apart from being a very busy forester, he took on himself the owner-son duty of a member of the State Foresters Executive. And he was there at a very important time in the history of the development of state forestry. That was in the late 60s and early 70s, when foresters achieved great strides and they improved their conditions to no end. And I think that Michael Darcy deserves a great word of thanks from all foresters for the work that was done at that particular time. Now, he never really left the executive, I think. I think he's still there, you know. At all the meetings ever since I came on the executive in the early 70s, in the meetings that we would go to, Mick was a very regular attender. And apart from that, I have a great file of letters on all aspects of foresters' conditions and anything to do with forestry. Because there is one thing about Michael that I'll try and find it out from him now that he has left forestry. He was always the first with the information. Where he got this information has always been a slight mystery. But you know, it was always very much on the ball, and he could nearly tell you what was going to happen next. I think we'll be asking him a few questions after a while where this all came from. I'm glad that Michael is staying on in forestry, and at a few meetings that we had recently in the private forestry area, I've seen Mick in attendance with his newfound friends, and I know that he'll make another great contribution on this new development in the private sector. And I won't continue any longer. What I would just want to say is that I wish Michael and Sally health and prosperity in this new phase. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Now, the next speaker I'm going to call travelled no less than 220 miles to be with us here tonight. And that is Michael O'Donovan, our Divisional Inspector. Michael has been in Wicklow for the past week on a course. He left, I think, around 3 o'clock today to travel from Avondale, Rathdrum, down to be with us here tonight. At enormous expense, I'd like to call on Michael to say a few words, please.
Colleagues and friends, it's a great honour to be here in spite of the fact that in spite of the fact that I've been a long way from this part of the country all week. But you know, it was very nice to leave in the afternoon today the place where Mick Darcy first welcomed me back to Avondale as housemaster. While I've said to quite a number of you in the past that I had the honour of welcoming you to Avondale and to Forestry. Well, Mick Darcy was there as a student when I came back as housemaster, and he and Dan O'Driscoll and the rest of the group had the honour of, if they would describe it as such, of welcoming me back. And they saw me for only a very short time in any case, only about a month or 6 weeks or something before they left Avondale. So I'm sure they can't complain about the treatment they got from the new housemaster after his arrival in the place. But I want to say that in the very short period that I knew Mick at that time, a friendship developed with the Darcy family, which has endured for all the years ever since. A lot of you, most of the forestry personnel here anyway, know Tom O'Carroll, and the previous superintendent of the forestry school, and you will be glad to know that he's in very good health. I was speaking to him last night, and he has fully recovered from a serious heart bypass operation which he had within the last 12 months. And only on Tuesday last, he returned after a 6-week holiday in the Canary Islands, accompanied by Christy McCormack. And I was saying to him that no doubt they were their usual drunken, rowdy pals even out there. I'm sure he found it hard to get Christy away from the bar and all the rest of it. But I also said to Tom that the one thing that I saw wrong with Avondale at the moment was that I found it difficult to sleep at night because of cats meowing around the place. Now, that remark won't mean a hell of a lot to most of you here, but it does to a number. And for the benefit of the people who don't understand, I think I should explain that it goes back to the days before we became the Forest and Wildlife Service. And there were an awful lot fewer animal lovers in forestry in those days than subsequently. And if you would, the older people amongst you anyway, if you would cast your minds back to the time before we had fridges for keeping the milk, you will know the sort of impact that so-called house pets made on the big pails of milk that used to be put out on stone slabs. And I'm sure very few people would like to see the map of Ireland, the map of England, the map of the world and all the rest of it, and so many tails sticking out of where you were to fill your jug of milk. And even almost 40 years on, it would be very hard for me to stand up and acknowledge publicly at this stage that the superintendent and the housemaster closed their eyes to an operation called Exterminate Cats. So, anyway, that has very little to do with Mick Darcy. It didn't happen in his time, but it certainly happened very shortly afterwards. You know, since I came back to Cork 9 years ago, every time that I come to this part of the county, I've been told that plantation was laid down by Mick Darcy and the other plantation was laid down by Mick Darcy. And I think I've yet to be in a plantation that wasn't in fact planted by Mick Darcy. And so much has been Mick's contribution to forestry in this area that his original forest has spawned something like 3 or 4 other forests and created jobs and chargeships for other people, as well as employment for quite a lot of people. And I suppose it's a measure of the work that Mick has put into this part of the country that forestry can attract a gathering of this size for an occasion like this. Enough has already been said about the work that Mick has done and his outstanding contribution to forestry. But I think that it behoves me to acknowledge publicly on behalf of the department, on behalf of his employers, his contribution over the years and his dedicated service, and to thank him for his work on behalf of the department. And if Mick had a fault, it is, as what Michael Doyle said earlier, that he starved his own forest in order to help others. And truly he was the man who would take the shirt off his back to help somebody else. He has been responsible for, I suppose, the planting of something in the region of a district nowadays. Anything in the region of from 20,000 to 30,000 acres. And that's a fantastic contribution from any individual. I would like to wish Michael and Sally all the best in the years ahead. And I have no doubt that anybody that he works for in the future will get the same sort of dedicated service that forestry has got in the past. And I am quite sure as well that our friendship will endure as it has for the last almost 40 years. So, God bless you both.
Thank you, Michael. Well, now, Michael Darcy has retired from the Forest Service. Forest and Wildlife Service, as we were always known, but I think we have now become the Forest Service. But Michael hasn't retired from forestry, far from it. He is now working with the private forestry section of the Southwestern Cattle Breeding Society, and I would like to call on the director of the Southwestern Cattle Breeding Society, Dr. John Crowley, to say a few words, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Darcy, fellow guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, could I say thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you tonight on this very significant occasion for the Darcys. If I'm a bit put off on an occasion like this, it is because I myself hardly know the difference between a silky spruce and a Norway fir or whatever other varieties you're accustomed to. But nevertheless, it is very satisfying for us to be here because, first of all, I should say, hearing about the 40 years of service, we don't have the elaborate procedure that the Civil Service Commission has, such that we wouldn't have the detailed application form. And there was mention of this man, you know, whom I met, who had, there was some suggestion he was in his late 40s or thereabouts, you know. So while you've been talking about the 40 years behind him, we were beginning to look at the 40 years ahead of him, actually. I think, looking at him there tonight beneath that tousled head of hair, I think we could be forgiven for thinking that he was no more than in his late 40s. Personally, I'm very pleased to welcome Michael to the team at Southwestern, and as somebody who was part of the public service myself, I can assure him that it is possible to survive and maybe even prosper, but at least to survive. And knowing the esteem, and indeed if we had any doubts about it beforehand, I think the attendance here tonight and the many, many compliments that have been paid to him have left us in no doubt about the very high regard in which he's been held by such a wide circle of his colleagues in the service. And while we were pleased that he was prepared to join us, and it would be seen as a significant step for him and for his family, no doubt, I hope that the move from the state sector to the co-op sector shouldn't be seen as such a dramatic move for anybody, because ultimately we're working for the local community also. you for the state sector, we for the cooperative community, which very largely overlap, I think. And in Southwestern, it's one of our major aims to try and diversify the range of farming activity and promote some new farm enterprises. And indeed, I might say that we're almost amazed at the growth in interest among the private sector in forestry development, and we're quite sure that Michael has a major part to play in our future plans in that regard. And in again welcoming him to our team, I hope that the goodwill and friendship that has been so evident here tonight towards him, I would very much hope that that will continue indeed into the future, and that you in the state sector could see the co-op sector in particular as playing a very complementary role in our joint efforts to take advantage and develop our natural resources to the best of our ability, with the aim of creating the job opportunities which I think the country needs so much today, perhaps more than at any time in its previous past. If I might refer, Mr. Chairman, to your reference to the car he provided you with, you made me a small bit sensitive about the car that we have provided him with. If any of you saw Mick Darcy arrive in a banger, that was our banger. But let me assure you that we do hope to do very much better. And that's a short-term arrangement, and the longer term holds our better prospects than that, I can assure you. So we wouldn't like you to judge this new organisation by the vehicle in which he's currently travelling about and so on like that. So again, Mr. Chairman, fellow guests, Mr. and Mrs. Darcy, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity of being with you, and we'll look after them as best we can.
Mr. Crowley, thank you. And may I say, the Darcys are long livers. Now, I think it's time to call on the men himself.
Michael, I won't call him Mr. Chairman because he never Mr. me. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where to start, and I'm sure you won't blame me, because I never expected an occasion like this. I thought, when they said I'd have a bit of a party, that we would have 20 or 30. But I think they're pushing on for roughly 140, and I don't know how they managed it. But the first thing I must say is I must thank Michael here, who was with me for 11.5 years, to be exact. Pat O'Halloran was the first man I met in Macroom when I came here, and has been, like Michael, a friend to me all those years. Trouble with Pat was that he wouldn't come near me. I had to go looking for him. And I said to him, maybe you'd come up to the house, Pat, and in the morning. Pat was gone, and he'd come back at 9 o'clock. And I mightn't be up I mightn't be up at that time, but Pat was very discreet about the whole thing. He would wait around. So thanks, Pat, and I don't think you changed in all those years. Tom Quinn was the other man who's on the committee, I believe, organising this. And Tom cannot be with us tonight. His mother is seriously ill. And in his absence, I would like to say thank you, Tom, for 8 years of hard work. Anybody that try and keep up with the work. And I'm glad that the people here tonight recognise that we put in an effort. And when I say that about Tom, I have to mention all the people, all the foresters who have been with me down the years. And they hadn't it easy, because there was always a lot of work to be done. And I believed that I joined forestry to help the people. And when I help the people, I mean the people of Macroom and the Macroom area. And I always thought my job was to create work. And that work was to be created for the common good, for the good of the men and the families and the people of the Macroom area. And that's what I set out to do. I never had or never got the number of staff that was required to do that work. And I said, that's about the only crib I have with forestry. I had about half the number of men that I could have employed if we had enough money to do it. And that was the only unhappy thing with me in all my time in forestry, that we hadn't enough men, enough work, enough money to create more jobs. Because I think that's what forestry should have been about for the people, particularly in rural Ireland, where jobs weren't easy to come by. Now, John Lyons, I believe as well, was in the committee also, a Kilkenny man, who came down to help us out when we couldn't manage the workshop. I want to say that I welcomed John when he came, and I'm delighted here tonight to say that we had a wonderful working relationship. And John and his wife became great friends of mine and Sally's, and I certainly am delighted to have an engineer to give us a hand out. But I must go back, I suppose, to the start of the workshop, and I suppose it would be unfair of me not to mention the man who was in the bad hut and no heating at the time in it, but he didn't mind. And that man is here tonight, and that's John Toomey. And when I start to praise the great men that worked with me down the years, I can tell you that John spent 1.8 standard man hours repairing chainsaws. He started off, and that was his time. No matter how bad the saw was or how good it was, that was the average. And he has maintained that all down the years. And only for him and his ability to, and his mechanical mind, we probably wouldn't have had the workshop, which now gives great employment. And I'm delighted, and I hope it keeps going as well as it was down the years. And I would like to say thank you, John, for your work. And when I come to the men of Macroom, well, what can I say? Only that they're all here tonight. Those that have been with me down the years, and those that are there presently. And I want to say, lads, I praised you. I said you were good. I knew you were good. And I never said you were bad. I never reported you. And I hope I was fair to you, because I wanted to be fair to you. I hope you came into the job in the morning happy, and that you went home happy, because that was my intention. And if there was any little difference between us, and I can't recall it, many of them, anyhow, you never said you were going on strike. But I had one man who used to come into the office. It was his job to come in, and he didn't want to stay very long. He knew that I didn't like smoking, and he'd start smoking when he came in so that he could get out. I had another man then, and I thought I'd be nice to him, that he'd live a long time, you know. And I said, you shouldn't be smoking, you're smoking too much, and it's very bad for your health. And he said to me, God, I couldn't give him up. So after about a month or two I came on again and I said, you know, you should give up those bloody cigarettes, you have a bad cold, they'll kill you. Well, he said, I'd sooner die, he says, than give them up. So I thought I failed here, but I'll try again. So after another few months I said, my God, you know, you better give up those bloody cigarettes. I said, they're very bad, and I'm coming in here now where I was working, and I said, I don't like the cigarettes. But he said to me, my God, he said, I owe a lot to the cigarettes. He said, when I was a young lad, he said, I had to go out to work there in a few bob, he says, to buy the cigarettes. And only for that, he says, I'd be at home and a fool yet. So I didn't win them all. But I want to say to all the men that worked with me, a very sincere thanks. The figures are there to prove that you were the best, and I was happy to have worked with you down those years, and thanks for your work and your kindness to me. For the foresters and all the students, trainees, and those people who have passed through Macroom, I'd like to say thank you for calling me up when you heard I was leaving forestry, for your cards, masses, and good wishes. I want to say thank you very much. They were very much appreciated. To all the inspectors, engineers, and all those people with whom I have worked, I would like to say thanks very much. And thanks to all the people who came here tonight, and in particular those who travel long distances, like Mick O'Donovan, Kerry, and Bob McConnell. And I suppose I'd better not forget Padraig Egan and Seamus Gallagher. Seamus and Maura. Seamus was here with me many years ago, and John Greedy, of course, as well. But like all good, true friends, they have come back here to be with me tonight, and I'm really delighted to have them and have you all. Now, I suppose when I think back about the 40 years, I think back of my home. And I'm delighted to have my brother here tonight, Paddy, and his wife, Claire. They have come down to be with me. Also my brother, Jim, and his wife, Bridget Hen. And I want to say I'm delighted to have them. I have, of course, as well, my daughter, Mary, and my son, Mike, and their friends. And I suppose I must mention also the woman that I met in Strokestown, County Roscommon, when I opened the first forest. Dan O'Driscoll was telling tales out of school, and I suppose I would have to admit that it was the truth. And since he did, I better tell you the story. I had a young girl, and there were races on in Midtown Malbay the next day. I was supposed to go there on the 10th, and I decided on the 10th that there was I better not go, that this girl was ready to go to the dance on that night. So I phoned up and they said that I just couldn't go, I couldn't make it, and they said it would be all right. So they held on to me for a long time for a man that came late. But to get back again to my wife Sally, I want to say tonight to her publicly, thank her for being a wonderful wife. Not alone was she a good wife, but she was a good mother, and is a good mother. But she was great to those people with whom she got no money from, and that was the forestry division. Because she had, on many occasions, to stay in, couldn't go to the sea because of fires, and had to open the door and meet people on many occasions when I wasn't there, and take messages on the phone, and we're still getting messages and letters, believe it or not. So I want to thank her for being so kind to all those people, because without her, I was lost. And thank you very much, Sally. I'd like to thank Dr. Crowley for his coming here tonight, and Kieran and Padraig, and to say that I was very happy in forestry, and I'm very happy to be in Bandon. They're so far so good anyhow. They're very good, very kind, and they say they're going to improve things, so that's it. I'd like to thank Casey family for the lovely meal, and I would like also to thank Dad Joe here in front of me, and it'll depend on how well it comes out or how well it appears to say that I'd be glad that he was here. But he has been a friend of mine and a neighbour in forestry down the years. And when I just mentioned neighbour, I would like to thank all my neighbours, all my friends, and most of them are here tonight. And in particular, I would like to mention my next door neighbour, Beatrice O'Neill, who has come down from Clonmel. She was a neighbour for the last 29 years, and I'm glad to have her. Yes, I forgot to mention that Jerry Manning, Tim Ring, Jackie Spillane, your writing is bad, Pat. No, you were good at writing when you were with me. I would like to thank them. Those are the men who organised this social on behalf of the Macroom and district forestry workers. And thanks, Pat, for letting me know. Now, I'm sure I have forgotten somebody, but if I have, I hope you will excuse me, because this is a big occasion for me, and I am very moved by the numbers here, by the tributes that were paid by all those people to me. I don't think I deserve them, but if I deserved half them, what you have said, I'm very pleased. And I hope that the good relationship, the kindness that has been shown to me down the years will prevail in the years ahead. And I would like to say to the, particularly to the men who worked with me and who confided in me when they had problems and who called to me at my house, that my door is open all the time. You'll be very welcome. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Michael. Well, now, I suppose time is pushing on and we have greater things to come. I would ask Jackie Spillane to stand up again, please, and to come up here. I think Jackie has a small token of appreciation from the staff of Macroom, Muskerry and Ballyburney Forest, and he'd like to show it to me. Set is coming. Few names and parks. Now, I think that Mary Spillane has something in her pocket too. So if Mary would go along to Sally there, please. Thank you, Mary. Now make talks here behind my back. So when you're not working, you can remote control and all me, so when you can have it on debate and everything.
Thanks very much, Michael, and thank you once again for your kind presentation. I never expected anything like this, and I'll always remember ye for it, and of course I'll always remember all those people who served with me. And as I said previously, I hope that we will have many years together, and that I will live to a long time to enjoy these wonderful gifts. Thanks very much.
Vera, I would Vera have a bouquet of flowers for Sally. Thank you, Vera, and thanks to everybody who has come up here tonight and spoken. You know, time is going on, and we're having a little bit of a dance.
Each land is blessed. across the ocean blue, to dwell again and make the scenes that of long ago I knew, to roam once more those green-clad hills with youngsters free and gay, and to hear the wild birds warble round my old home far away.